Begin the current Daf, Mesechta Yevamos Daf Tzadi Dal. Begin 11 lines down at the top of the Yommi, where the Gemara continues the discussion of the previous Daf regarding that of an Eid Echad, which that was the theme of our Mishnayos over here in this parak, regarding a woman getting remarried based on one witness. And the question was regarding as it applies to a Yavam, regarding if it's to allow her to marry the Yavam, to not have to marry the Yavam, what's called Muteres L'Shuk. That's what we're in the middle of discussing regarding bringing a proof if we would believe one aid, even regarding to say that she doesn't have to do Yibum, or would we say that maybe she's not going to be Medayika Mitzvah because she hates him so much, she can do anything she can to get away from that Yavam. Ashur corresponds to anything that Bacham B'Shem is doing for today's Daf. Something we discussed in today's Daf, like we said, the Gemara is in the middle of discussing Eid Echad L'Mishri Yevama L'Alma, when there's one witness to permit the Yavama to marry other people, that she does not have to marry the Yavam, where let's say the Eid Echad testifies that the Yavam died, or that what happened first is that her husband died first and then the child died, so that there was no mitzvah Yibum. The distinction of Ishtay and Ishes Gisai, the difference between when it's his wife or it's his, and in case of when he has his brother-in-law's wife. And finally the Gemara ends over with the Machlekes of Chamais La'Chamisa. What's the halacha with the mother-in-law after the death of his wife? Is the mother-in-law still forbidden or not? So like I said, the Gemara was discussing the question of Eid Echad L'Mishri Yevama L'Alma. So the Gemara begins trying to bring a raya to this halacha from Amalei Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi. From Amalei, some say it's Rav Achal Rav Ashi. So it's one of those two Amaram said, Tashma, I'll bring a raya from Mishnah of Kupit Chesma Beis regarding this halacha of believing in Eid Echad to permit the Yevama to marry someone else and not be tied down to the Yavam. The Mishnah says like this: Eina Isha Nemenes Leimer. A woman is not believed to say, Meis Yevami. She herself cannot come and say, "Oh, my brother-in-law passed away. And not say that now I can marry whoever I want to." She's not believed to say that. So too, she can't say, "Oh, my sister died. Shakan Slabesa, then I could go ahead and marry her husband because it's her brother-in-law, which is only forbidden as long as the sister's alive." No, she's not believed in these two cases. Fine. Says the Gemara, the diak is she herself, she's not believed to say this. But it sounds like if it was one witness, maybe we only say regarding the woman, but regarding Eid Echad, sounds like Mehemen, we would believe. So you see, regarding the first case of saying that her Yavam died to be able to get married, is only she who is not believed, but the Eid Echad is believed. So that answers our question in the previous time, that Eid Echad is L'Mishri Yevama L'Alma, could permit the Yevama to the world, and we don't say that, oh, Lo Daika Mitzvah. Says the Gemara rejects the raya and says no. According to your reasoning, Amos Seifa. Look at the further halachas of that same Mishnah. The Mishnah continues it and says, Ein ha'ish nemalema. We were talking about a case where a woman is not believed to say certain things. And the Mishnah says, Ein ha'ish nemalema, the man is not believed to say, Meis achi, my brother died. Shayam mesishta, therefore I have to do yibum to his wife. And neither is he believed to say, Meis ishta, he can't say, my wife died. Sha'esa zachaysa, I can marry her sister. So here also, you're going to tell me the same thing? That only the husband is not believed to say these things. But if there's a single witness, the witness would be believed. In other words, do we believe Eid Echad to say that your wife died to marry her sister? How can you say such a thing? We understand regarding by a woman. The rabbis are lenient because of we don't want a woman to be bound, to be stuck without being able to marry another man. So therefore we're lenient that we have the Eid Echad to believe, that say that the husband died. But man, Michael, what are you going to say? Why would we believe Eid Echad to say that his wife died, or whoever it is, to be able to allow him to marry another woman? He can marry whoever he wants to. So if you're making the diyukum by saying, we don't believe her/him, and that Eid Echad would, that wouldn't make sense, because how could it be that Eid Echad would be believed to say that his wife died, that he can marry her sister? Ella, rather, obviously, don't make such a dig to say that, we're only not believing her, but the Eid Echad we would believe. No, because it's the halacha itself that was necessary to say that we don't believe her. Truth is, you're right. It would also be that we wouldn't believe Eid Echad, and there was no raya. So why are we saying specifically her? It's kiyitzach. What the Mishnah needed to tell us is the Kiva. We want the Kiva. We want to tell you specific chiddush regarding the Kiva. Which is so good that when you would have thought to say, since Rabbi Kiva says Yesh Mam Zemechiva Lavin, Kiva is very stringent. He holds even from a negative prohibition to create a child a mamzer. Which that means to say, Yevamos Daf, when the woman marries someone else and not her yavam, that means to say the child will be a mamzer. Ooh, so maybe you would say that she'd be concerned for the kilkul of the zar, the daika, and she would be precise, and therefore if she says my yavam died, she could be allowed to marry someone else because she wouldn't go ahead and create a situation which would ruin her children. Kamash Malan, that's when we need to tell you that no, we don't believe her, because sometimes she'll hit her yavam so much, like we had previously said, and therefore she won't be careful and she will marry someone else just to get away from the yavam. And therefore that's the chiddush. You could even say that the halacha was even by Eid Echad, not like we want to make a dig say, oh, it says she's not believed, but Eid Echad would be believed. No, truth is even with Eid Echad wouldn't be believed. But I would say actually to the contrary, by the woman, I would have thought actually to believe her even more, because she's concerned, she's going to really do due diligence because she doesn't want to have her children to be mamzerim from this chiyuv alav. That's kamash malan that no, that she hates him so much, she might not be so careful, and she might marry someone else, and therefore we don't believe the woman. But again, it could even be that we don't believe it by Eid Echad. Now, Rav Amar, he says that actually Eid Echad nemen b'Yevamo. We had mentioned two types of questions by Yevamo. One, do we believe Eid Echad regarding having her marry the Yavam? We have one regarding that she does not have to marry, that she can marry Lashuk. So Rabbi says, Eid Echad nemen b'Yevamo, we do believe a single witness by Yevamo. Mikabel chema from Mikabel chema. What's the kabel chema? If le'isakar sitarta, if for a punishment of karas you permitted through Eid Echad to say that your husband died, go ahead, get married. So it's allowed. So when it's just a negative prohibition of Yevamo L'Shuk, like Koshkin, isn't all the more so for sure we can believe Eid Echad. We believe Eid Echad even by Chiv Karas, which is by the married woman. For sure we're going to believe him regarding a Yevamo L'Shuk. But one of the rabbis said to Rabbah, the woman herself will disprove the Kavachama that you're saying. Because the Issachar Satarta, for the punishment of Karas, you permit the woman, meaning a woman is believed to say her husband died. But yet regarding the Issa of a negative prohibition of the Yavam, Lo Hitartu, as recorded explicitly in the mission of Kuf Yitches, that no, you don't permit the woman to believe her regarding her Yavam. So Ve'elaihi might tell them, so wait a second, why don't we believe her by the Yavam? Why don't we even believe her regarding her Ashes Ish of her marriage, which is Chiv Karas? I'll tell you what. Given the zim and the san like Kasim, sometimes she'll hate her husband her yavam so much. Like Daikim, she's not going to be so careful and precise in how, and she's going to get married, even though maybe it could be that she actually would have a chiv of yibum, but she's just trying desperately to say, oh, the husband died first, then my son. Okay, I don't have to marry him. She marries whoever she wants, not being stuck to this brother-in-law over us. So therefore, Eid Echad Ami. So therefore, when there's one witness, also the Kim the Zimna the Sani. Like since at times that she's going to hate her brother-in-law, like Daika Mitzvah, she's not going to be so precise when she hears the testimony of the single Eid, and she get married. Because the whole principle of Eid Echad was Gabay was built on the halacha of that the woman's really going to be careful. That's why we let Eid Echad regarding the halachas of getting married, but not by the case of Yevamos Daf, which is not going to be so careful, and if there's no Kabel Chaimer to say if Le'isr Karas Sitar to Le'isr Lab, like Koshkin, it's not true. But Isser Karas should be careful, Isser Lab should not be careful.
So all we're concerned, we don't know who died first, the child or the husband. Is that what the case here?
I'm saying the Eid Echad comes, let's say,
why
says...
do we have to worry so much? Why don't he does a chalitza just in case? What's the problem?
If he wants to do Yibum.
So we are not letting him do it.
Why not?
Because it's a chashash. You don't have to. We don't know. But she's not.
I know, but we don't know if that's the case. In other words,
so we could fix it.
No, he's saying I'm doing Yoni Yibum.
Well, you could say, but we have Ed It's okay. Because I agree that it's.
I know, but I'm saying the Eid Echad is good. The Eid halacha of Eid Echad is built on. Aguna is. No, it's not. I'm saying by Aguna.
It's a situation we believe Eid Echad because she's going to research very well because she's not going to be going into trouble.
Because if we don't have any testimony,
but
she's stuck.
We could fix it very good. We have a chashash. So.
But let's say he says I want to do Yibum.
So. What if she doesn't want to do Yibum? She says I don't want to.
Stuck. He could do Balkarva.
That's a brother that dies. The Yom do Yibam Bal Korchoi?
Bal Korcha, yeah. That's the Yevamos Bal Korcha. So she's dying to get away from this brother-in-law, and so she'll say, "Oh, I have a testimony," and she's going to go run away. But again, that's only because she's going to be meticulous and careful. But stam, when the Eid Echad comes along, we don't necessarily trust the Eid Echad, so therefore there's no Kabbalah Chayv, we don't really believe the Eid Echad. Now the Gemara continues with the halacha of the Mishnah that says that Midrash Darish Rabbi Elazar ben Masi b'chulu, that he said that if there was only kedusha, let's say a woman has testimony that her husband died, and she only gets engaged to another man, and then that second man gives her a get, that's not going to invalidate her from ku'una. Why? Because that's not Isha. It's not her husband. The second man was his nus. She thought that her first husband died. Turns out he's really alive. And the kedushin, unlike Nesuin, because Nesuin we had Gzer Rabbanan that we required you to have a get because it might look like that you're leaving a marriage without a get. But when the second husband you only engaged to, Rabbi Elazar ben Masi said that there's nothing here, you could just leave. And even if that husband will give you a get, that wouldn't even be like a reach haget to invalidate you from Guhin. But the Gemara makes a comment. Amr Rabbi Merav, Habalei Rabbi Elazar lemidrash bein marganisa. Rabbi Elazar could have expounded from this pasuk a pearl. The Dersh Bechaspan instead expounded it like a shard. Meaning, my marganisa, what's the pearl he could have darshan from this pasuk? I mean, he expounded from this pasuk that it says V'isha Gerusha Me'isha, that only if a woman is divorced from her husband. This man's not her husband. Oh, so therefore it's not going to invalidate it from Guna. But he said you could have darshaned it like a pearl, which is the Tana Lina Braisa. It says V'isha Gerusha Me'isha, if a woman is divorced from her husband, what does it mean she's divorced from her husband? Afila in this kasha Ela Me'isha, even if she's only divorced from her husband, what does that mean? For example, let's say he writes to her again and he says, you are divorced from me, but you're not permitted to anyone else. So that's not a total gerushin, it's only a separation from her husband. Afil in this garsha elameisha is psula kahuna, she can be invalid for kahuna if the husband dies, which now she's really permitted to marry a kohen, because she's not a grusha, she's almana, because she was never really fully divorced. Still she can be invalid for kahuna. Behind reich haget, that's what's called the scent of a get, the place of a kahuna, which validates for kahuna, where it's not even a real get, but it was some semblance of a get. That's what a marganisa could have Be'isha Gerusha Me'isha, if the gerushin is only from her husband, it's going to invalidate her as a Gerusha. Instead, he darshan, if a woman's divorced from her husband, it wasn't her husband, that's a chaspa, he calls it. You could have a marganisa, and you could have darshan something that's a more beautiful shot on the pasuk. The halacha of our mishnais in this parak regarding the report of the death of the relative. So the Mishnah continues, Misha holcha ishta l'mdin ziyam, which was now instead of the husband going overseas, the woman, that's the women's trip. The women are going to Italy. They go overseas. And Ba'ava Amrulai, and they came and they tell him, Mesa ishtacha, your wife died. And Vanasa esach isa. And he marries her sister because the whole Esa b'chayis only is when his wife is alive. Now his wife died. He can marry her sister. And it turns out she just extended her trip and they didn't know, and she comes back home. So halacha is muteres la'atzalai. He's permitted to go back to his wife, and the reason that is because the kedushin that he did with her sister is nothing. It's like znus. Which the Gemara tells us later on the next daf, Tzadikim and Aleph, that only the woman herself, her laying with another man makes her forbidden. But laying with her sister does not make her forbidden to her husband. So therefore, the husband is permitted to go back to his wife, as Gittim days. And moreover, he's even permitted to, in the relatives of the second woman, meaning his sister-in-law, who he thought he was marrying because he thought his wife was dead, he's permitted to marry her daughter, his niece. Because the Gemara tells later on the Tzadik Zayin and Aleph, a woman that a man rapes or seduces, which he's not married to, he's allowed to marry those relatives. So although we know when you're married to a woman, the relatives become forbidden, but here it's not a woman that he married. He thought he married her, but it wasn't a real marriage. Therefore, he's permitted in the relatives of the second one. And that woman, his sister-in-law, that second one, is permitted in his relatives. Now, the Meiser Rishona, if let's say ultimately the first woman, his original wife, does die, then he's permitted in the Achai Sishta into the second woman. Now let's say they tell him Meisa Ishta, that his wife died. But says Achaisa and he marries her sister. Then they tell him, you know, the truth is Kayemas Haisa. She was alive at the time. But a Meisa, then you're right, she ended up dying. Havlad Rishamam is the first child, the child that was born when the wife was alive, that child's gonna be a mamzer, because obviously that is a chayse shtoi.
That's also a kumas, or that's a korban Yom Kippur?
Yeah, that's a chiyuv of misa. Yeah, that's a chayse shtoi.
So that's a kumas.
Yeah, and the achron ein mamzer, and the second one, which is already after the wife died, so then the child's not gonna be a mamzer because it's not a chayse shtoi. A chayse shtoi is only as long as the wife is alive. Now, Rabbi Yisrael, he says words that we're going to explain in the Gemara. If it's invalidating others, it's going to invalidate for himself. Whatever is not going to invalidate for others, in the is not going to invalidate for himself. So the Gemara actually opens up, as Tosfos explains, because of the words of Rabbi Yissi, which we're going to end up explaining. But from his words, it's evident the words the Gemara is going to explain now for the Tana Kama. That is, from Rabbi Yissi, we see that he's speaking about al dachem al de'atzmai, that there's more than one party involved. So the same thing is for the Tana Kama, which is that. So really, just to explain the preface, Rabbi Yissi is speaking, as we're going to explain, Rabbi Yissi is speaking of a case where Achai Sishta was also married, meaning to say that Azl Ishti Begisu L'Medina Sayam, like the Gemara opens up. The story was, not only did his wife go overseas, like our Mishnah was talking about, there was another individual that went on this trip, his brother-in-law, meaning his wife's sister's husband, also went L'Medina Sayam overseas. And then one witness comes and tells him, your wife died. And that same witness tells to that wife, his sister-in-law, that your husband died. So, as the picture shows, we have Reuven and Nachshon, two brother-in-laws, which they're both married to sisters, to Rachel and Leah. The witness comes and says, I'm sorry to tell you that your husband and your wife passed away. So, Reuben goes along and he marries his sister-in-law. Achai Sishta, who is not Achai Sishta anymore. Her husband's dead, and his wife is dead. That's what the case is talking about in the Mishnah. And then, turns out that really his wife and her husband were alive. They come back after the Eid Echad had said that they died. So, obviously, says the Gemara, the Hani Nesur, this marriage that Reuben did to Leah is effective. The Kemitzvah Eishes Gisa Gisa, everyone agrees that this Leah, his brother-in-law's wife, is forbidden on his brother-in-law. Because that's your classic case of our Masechta, of our Perek, which is that when the woman got married based on an Eid Echad, even though we permit her, but that at the end she's going to be forbidden. Bein Labal, Bein Labal, she's forbidden because really she was a married woman. Even so, says the Tana Kama, says the Gemara in explanation of the Tana Kama, Eishes Gisa Sida. Yes, the wife of his brother-in-law is forbidden, that's the Leah, but Ishtoi, his wife Rachel, this Shari is going to be permitted. We don't say, and that we're going to see is what Rabbi Yisrael actually does hold. We don't say Mitech Shanesa Eishes Gisa Gisa. Wait a second. In this situation, in this story, in this narrative, since the wife of his brother-in-law is forbidden on his brother-in-law, his wife should be forbidden on him. No, we don't say that. We say that only Leah is going to be forbidden, and Rachel is going to be permitted. We'll see that Rabbi Yisrael who says Kol Shapoisal De'echem, Poisal De'atzma, that's what he means to say. That Mitech Shanesa Eishes Gisa Gisa Ti'asa Esh De'elav. That Shapoisal De'echem means say since that this Nachshon is making it forbidden on Leah, so then his Rachel is going to be forbidden on him for Reuben. But the Tana Kama doesn't say that. So says the Gemara, let's say our Mishnah that says that she's permitted to go back to him, is to lick Rabbi Kiva, not like Rabbi Kiva. Why? Dear Rabbi Kiva, if you think the Mishnah be like Rabbi Kiva, since the Achais Ishtoi, this woman, this Leah, requires a get from Reuven, because like we said, that's the halacha when the woman got married to the second man, she has to have a get from him. So Havilah, that makes his wife Rachel achayis Gerushasai. She's the sister of his Gerusha. Technically, I mean it's not really a Gerusha, but we're requiring a get, so it's like Rachel's achayis Gerushasai. And because the time in the Brisa that you do require a get, because the Brisa says Kol Araisha B'Torah, anyone who marries an erva, it's ain't shrichs a get. You don't need a get. She doesn't need a get from you're not really married. Chutz me'eshes ish and this except for a married woman that got married based on the courts. Now that is, as we explained, the Peches Mabez because of Gzeir. Because what do you mean? Why do you need a get? She's a married woman. This is Maisa's nus. Yeah, but people might say, "Oh, I see he's divorcing her without a get," and they're going to think that the original person had divorced her, and then you see that certain situation might come out of that. So we said we require a get to alleviate any people's concerns. But Rekiva Meiser, he adds on Af Eishes Ach, also a brother's wife, and Rachais Isha, and also a wife's sister. So as Rashi explains, at this point the Gemara assumes that for these two cases, let's say Eishes Ach, is even if his brother was married to a woman, and then the brother heard that he died, he did Yibum, and then his brother comes, that woman that he quote unquote did Yibum, which wasn't really the case, would require a get. So to Bachais Isha, it would be the same thing, which is really our case over here, where this was his wife's sister, that obviously there was no marriage over here because his wife was alive. It doesn't make a difference. Rabbi Kiva is saying that this lay would still require a get, which Rashi says, time of Le'adina. And I don't really know the reason why that would be. Because here you cannot say, which was really what we had said in the Peches, that, maybe the first husband divorced her and then the second husband married her and therefore we require a get. So people shouldn't think that, he's letting her go without a get because maybe it was a real marriage. Can't be. Because even if Nachshon had this person, the first husband had divorced her, and the Kedushin of Reuben would not have taken effect. If it's a brother, not this case, meaning the case of the brother's wife. And so to our case of Achais Isha, where once his wife comes, obviously it's revealed to everyone that the Kedushin of the second one was not a Kedushin, because it's Achais Isha. Even so, Rabbi Kiva penalizes and requires a get. That's how the Gemara is understanding right now. What it means that Rabbi Kiva's Moisev Af Achais Isha, that Achais Isha would require a get. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Kiva by a get. Since Rabbi Kiva says in this situation this lay would require a get, Mele it's allowed. So by default, his wife becomes forbidden on him because it's achitz kudashasei, achitz kudashasei, which is not like our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says that the wife could go back to him. Says come on, no, lavit ma'lah. Didn't we say on this? I'm going to give them mechibar yisam Hi eshes ach. It's not true. This case of eshes ach is not the way we assumed that it meant. Hey, what's the case talking about? It specifically could go in shekidish achavas isha. His brother only got engaged to a woman. And then they went overseas. And then the brother heard that his brother died. When he married his wife. That's where the Amri Inchi people are going to say when they see the first chassan, the first brother come back, they're going to say, wait a second. From the fact that the second brother married the same woman, must have been that Hachkama, the first brother, who went overseas and came back years later, Tanoh Havle Kedushin. Must have been he had a stipulation in his Kedushin which was not fulfilled. It wasn't fulfilled, therefore the second brother is allowed to go to marry her. But so it comes at the second brother, Shapin Nasiv. Yeah, he appropriately did marry her. And if she's going to go out without a get, it's going to look like a married woman is going out without a get. So too regarding the other case Rabbi Kiva added on. Also the case of the married sister, where what's the case talking about? The wife's sister. It's Isha. He only got engaged to him. Again, it's specifically what we keep on saying is kiddush. And then his wife went overseas. But they heard that she died. They went and married her sister. People are going to say, must have been Hachkamaisa, the first sister that he was engaged to. Must have been Tanoi Havle Mekudusha. Must have had a stipulation in the Kedushin, which was not fulfilled. And therefore, the marriage he had with her sister was an appropriate marriage. Even though it really wasn't, But people might say that, therefore we require a get from the second sister, because that the first one had kedusha. That's what Rabbi Kiva was saying within that brisa. But in Elab it says the Gemara Nisuin, like in our Mishnah, where his first wife was married to him, says the Gemara, could you say Tanoah Havli ben Nisuin, that there was a stipulation in marriage? Everybody knows that a person would not make his bia, his intimacy, retroactively into his nus. You don't make stipulations on the suin, which is when you're already being intimate. So therefore, everyone knows that the marriage of the second one, meaning of the sister, is nothing. And therefore, even according to Rabbi Kiva, you would not require a get. And that's why you're permitted to your wife, even if our mission is like Rabbi Kiva, because it's not a ches kirushasa, because we would not require yerushin. The whole reason why I require a get is only because when the first one was Kiddushin. Well, Kiddushin maybe he was not really married before the first one. The was not a real Kiddushin, it was Tanoi. That's what people hold about. Would require a get. But in our case of a Chesishta, not requiring a get. No one's going to say such a thing, because everyone knows it must have been a mistake, and not that there was a stipulation in it, because here the sisters came back. So you would not require a get from her, and therefore it wouldn't be a Ches Kirushasai, and therefore he would be permitted in his wife. So our Mishnah could even be like Rabbi Kiva. But the Gemara does have the following question. Amalei Rav Asher Rav Kahana says, if it's really so that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Kiva, that is, you're trying to explain that our Mishnah is even like Rabbi Kiva, so now I have a question. Listening down to Chamaisa, then you should have also said the case of his mother-in-law, where they tell him, your wife died and he marries her mother. So you're finding the cases when you're permitted to go back to the wife, or what happens after a death. So why don't you say also the mother-in-law? Because we learned that Rabbi Kiva says, the mother-in-law regarding after the death of his wife is lav b'streifa. There's no punishment of streifa, meaning that she's going to be permitted. What's this referring to? It's time I learned the brisa. The brisa quotes a pasuk in Vayikra. It says a man that's going to take a woman and her mother, that's zima, that's be'eshes streifu, they're going to be burnt in the fire, oisei be'eshen, him and eshen. Now, what does it mean eshen? Oisei be'achas man. Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says it means him and one of them. Because in Greek, you call achas one, hena. So eshen, the word is hena. The Torah is telling you the last one that you married, which was obviously the prohibition, is going to get burned. That's Rabbi Shloimy. Rabbi Kiva says, no, oisei be'eshtein, him and the two of them. What does it mean, them and the two of them? How could that be? The Gemara in Sanhedrin asks, what's the difference between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shloimy? Because most definitely, his regular wife, it can't be that Rabbi Kiva is saying that the two of them are going to get streifa, because what did this innocent woman do? When she married him permissibly. Now that he marries her mother, why is she retroactively at fault for now that her husband's married to the two of them? So it's machlekes Abaye and Rav. Abaye says what's called mashma's dorish in the kibbutz. Really, then there's no real disagreement. There's only how you expand the psukim. Kiva holds that the psukim is talking about two prohibitions, meaning it's talking about his mother-in-law and his mother-in-law's mother. Both of them are being learned out from this pasuk that they get the misa of streifa. That's what the pasuk is saying. If a man's going to take es isha ve'es ima, both of them are prohibited, meaning isha is his mother-in-law and ima is his mother-in-law's mother. That's what's saying be'esha streifa, that they're both going to get the penalty of streifa. Shmuel holds no, the pasuk was only talking about one woman. It was only talking about his mother-in-law. And when it says kikach ish es isha, that's his first wife that was married permissibly. Ves ima, that's his mother. And the Torah is saying gisrifu oisei ve'eshen means es achas men, which is only the mother-in-law. Now, the mother-in-law's mother that is going to be punishment of streifa, according to Abaye's interpretation, how does Rabbi Shloimy know that? That's from a Gezer Shava, as the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Daf Ein Hema base. That's how Abaye explains it. Now, Rav actually explains it that his mother-in-law after his wife's death, that's the difference between Rabbi Shloimy and Rabbi Kiva. According to Rabbi Shloimy, you're still going to get streifa. So when it says oisei ves achas men, what does it mean? And one of them, meaning even if both of them are not alive. For example, if his wife died and then he married her mother, that means achas men. The wife didn't. You don't have both around anymore. It's only the mother-in-law around. Still, there's going to be streifa. Which Rabbi Kiva holds no oisei ves shtehen, meaning only when both are alive. His wife and his mother is alive, then there's streifa, which we presume that When we say he's going to get burned, same thing as his mother-in-law, because women are the same as men for the punishments. So now that's what the Gemara is going to go explain the question. Our Mishnah did not say the mother-in-law. The Bishlam Labai, you understand according to Abai that it says that really there's no halacha dispute between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Kiva. The whole difference only is regarding the case of how you interpret the pasuk. Rabbi Shimon Sabi holds Chadik Siv. It was talking about one only, his mother-in-law. Rabbi Kiva held Tartik Siv. The pasuk is referring to two types of women, where, like we said, according to Rabbi Kiva, you learn that the mother-in-law is mother from this pasuk. According to Rabbi Shimon, you don't learn that from over here. And meaning what? And both Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Kiva, they're not talking about a mother-in-law after the death of the wife. So therefore, shopper, it would make sense why we're not mentioning the mother-in-law in our Mishnah, because no one says mother-in-law after the death is going to be permitted. But according to Rabbi Dama, that he says difference between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Kiva is that the mother-in-law after the death of his wife, that according to Rabbi Kiva, this is Rava according to Rabbi Kiva, the mother-in-law is going to be permitted. So listen to me, why are you telling me regarding the halacha of what's going to be after the death? What the halacha is going to be regarding the woman? Why don't you say regarding the mother-in-law too? What the halacha is that you're saying, oh, your wife died, so now you're permitting your mother-in-law. Why aren't we saying that case too? Because we're going like Rabbi Kiva, chamois is mutala chamisa sister. Why pick only a sister-in-law? It's even by a mother-in-law, and it's like Rabbi Kiva, it's even a bigger chiddush. So Amalei said to him, it's not true. Because although the pasuk excludes that there's no punishment of sreifa for the mother-in-law after the death of his wife, you think it's excluding it from a prohibition? There's still a prohibition. So therefore, when we're talking about in our Mishnah, we're saying, that now he goes and marries the sister-in-law, because that we know is not usher after the wife's death. According to Rabbi Kiva, you couldn't have said it, and also the mother-in-law, because although there's no sreifa, you still have a prohibition. So the Mishnah could be like Rabbi Kiva. It's not difficult on Rava's interpretation of Rabbi Kiva. But then we're continues asking on the Mishnah. B'ti aser, the first wife should be forbidden on the husband, b'shchiva da'achleisa, when he lays with the sister, because again he thought his wife was dead, so he married her sister. Now the wife should be prohibited to the husband. Because it's the same thing with the other gender. When a woman has her husband goes overseas, she becomes forbidden to her husband when she lays with her second husband, even though it was an error. So why is the Mishnah saying that the husband is permitted to go back to his wife? What's the difference? What's the gender discrepancy? Why, when the woman's husband goes overseas and she's with another man, she becomes forbidden to the husband? Whereas the husband, when his wife goes overseas and he's with her sister, she's not forbidden to him. Says it's not comparable. Why? Because Ishma, his wife, did b'mezid, if she deliberately has relations with another man, asira mederaisa, she's biblically prohibited to her husband. Like the pasuk says, if she wasn't forced, which sounds like that she's prohibited if she wasn't forced, but if she was, then she's permitted to her husband. So therefore, b'shogig, when she does it by mistake, for example, let's say the court had told her she's allowed to get remarried, so goes about Rabbanan. Rabbanan goes, okay, you're right, biblically you're not prohibited, but the Rabbanan penalized you because you weren't careful. However, it's continued to have a tzadihim at Aleph, but achayis isha regarding for the husband, regarding his wife's sister, the b'mezid, even if the husband deliberately has relations with her sister, lo yasira, that would not make his wife forbidden on him midiraisa biblically, as we're going to learn later on. So therefore, when it's done by mistake, like goes Rabbanan with the Rabbanan with that goes, it didn't penalize the husband. We only penalize the woman, even though it's b'shegig, because midiraisa, if she did b'mezid, should be forbidden. But by the husband, even if he did b'mezid, midiraisa, he would not be forbidden. So therefore, in this case, when he did b'shegig, we didn't penalize the husband from being forbidden to his wife. Thank you to any time.